I'm Zach. I'm with ReWalk Robotics. I'm a physical therapist living in Michigan, kind of helping to cover some of the metropolitan Midwest region. So I'm in and out of especially Chicago quite a bit, but also Indianapolis, Cleveland, Minneapolis, places like that. So I've been with ReWalk for a little bit over 2 years. And I had the chance, during these kind of down weeks, to chat with Mercedes, with the Illinois Spinal Cord Injury Association, and with Rebecca, with Backbones. And we, through a series of, really good discussions, we're able to kind of come up with this outreach initiative to those who are interested in learning more about exoskeleton technology. So the way tonight's going to work, I really want this to feel very informative, but still very engaging. Part of what we've been doing during these downtimes is reaching out to potential users and just making sure that they're up to date, knowing what technology is available to them and knowing that they can access this equipment locally for their own use. And if they're, a good enough candidate, there are options for us to try to appeal for their own personal device. So you'll see in this picture here on the right, that's me on the right with our good friend Candace, who is out of the University of Michigan. So maybe there's a Michigan fan in here. But she was able to get coverage for her own unit after a few months worth of battling it out with the insurance company, and we were able to help her out. So it's really exciting to see someone using this equipment in her own community that really was pretty self-motivated to do so. And that's her physical therapist, Michelle, there on the left. So again, thank you guys for rolling into this call. The way this will work, you do have a chat function. You also have the Q&A. I'll try to answer most of the questions at the end because I think the way I have this presentation set up, most will be answered within the presentation itself. But if something is just burning in the back of your mind, feel free to type it out and I'll try to address it when I can. I know that I'm the only one who could be speaking right now, but I do very much want it to feel like your voices are heard. So with that, I'll just kind of jump in. And again, to those just rolling in, thank you for doing so. Thank you for being patient with this. We're still figuring out the technology and making it as accessible as possible. So let's get over to the next slide. There we go. So for this discussion, really quick, we'll go over what we're doing with ReWalk Robotics. What is the exoskeleton device? Who are the good candidates? What are the benefits of being upright? The process for being evaluated and the resources. And I guess I should kind of jump in and say that as a physical therapist, my role with ReWalk Robotics, I serve kind of two functions. I help to interface with the patients, the potential users, and really I'm that kind of first point of contact for those that are interested in this technology, because I'm equipped with that clinical knowledge and insight to really determine, is this someone who's appropriate for this equipment? Are there other pieces of technology that they may be better off using? Really just kind of gauging patient safety and effectiveness. That's really kind of what I bring into this first and foremost. And then secondly, I'm kind of in the background communicating with doctors and medical professionals and people on the business side and how they would adopt this technology or how they would adopt this sort of programming. So I really get to kind of wear multiple hats, and it's really quite exciting for me. So likely, if anyone from this call, either if it's you or someone that is interested in this technology, I'll be that first point of contact for you. So our mission with ReWalk is to fundamentally change the quality of life for individuals with lower limb disability through the creation and development of market-leading robotic technology. Simply summarized, our mission is to help people. It's something that I personally take quite a bit of pride in doing, and it's still to this day is a pretty powerful experience to be able to see someone who's a great candidate, a good fit for the technology, stand up for the first time and look them eye to eye, or in some cases, I forget that some are well over 6 feet tall, so they're taller than me, I'm staring up at them. It's a really, really cool experience to be able to share that, and oftentimes they'll have their loved ones with them, so it's just kind of creates this real big bond on the front end. And since we're having multiple communications through this process, we really develop a kind of close relationship with the people that are invested in this technology. So I want to create a little context for you. This is Terry Verline. She is a retired Army sergeant, and she is the first U.S. citizen to complete a marathon in the ReWalk exoskeleton, and she did so back in November of just this past year. She's been walking in her device since 2014, and she's taken, now at this point, over 1 million steps. So really, this is kind of the testament of what human will and determination and technology can get you to. But ultimately, it was Terry that did this, and it really was a remarkable experience to even witness secondhand and learn about. She's quite an amazing individual, and there's a lot of press on her if people are interested in learning more about her story. So as much as I can talk about the technology, I think really what's more fascinating for me is getting in that boat with people and learning what does this technology mean for them, and what is it that they want to do. And I'll show you a couple other examples of some cool things people are doing with their equipment down the line. So the ReWalk itself, if you take the person out of the device, this is what you're looking at here. It is defined as a powered exoskeleton, providing mechanization at the hip and the knees, which enables individuals with spinal cord injury or lower limb paraplegia to stand upright, to walk, and to turn. It is cleared by the FDA for personal ownership and use at home and in the community. So it is important to note that this equipment is present in rehab facilities, but it also can follow facilities that have equipment that may be either tethered or can't leave the facility. This is a great point where people can access this equipment for their own personal use. Really, we wanted to create a device that enabled people to walk at home, walk, out on their street, at the mall, in the parks, or across the city of New York, just like Terry did. It's really kind of meant for a wide variety of versatile use. So I'm not sure if you guys will get sound. Hopefully it won't blast your ears out here. But this is just kind of a nice highlight video of some other ways in which the ReWalk. Hearing that. So with that kind of video, there's a couple great takeaways there. I mean, you're seeing people walk up to certain obstacles and stop with their own volition. You're seeing people balancing on one crutch, so that way one hand is free to either manipulate an object or interact with another human. It really is it allows for people to, as seamlessly as possible, integrate with the rest of their surroundings. So I am seeing a few more people join in. No problem at all. Glad you guys are here. Maybe you got in a little bit earlier and I'm just catching this now, but I'm glad you guys are here. We're going to have recordings of this too. So if people missed the beginning, not a problem. We'll be kind of reviewing and touching on this stuff through the rest of the presentation. But for those who don't know, I'm Zach, physical therapist with ReWalk. And you have a chat function up at the top or bottom of your screen where if you have questions, feel free to rattle them off and I'll try to address them as we go on. So thank you guys for being patient with that and coming in. So yeah, let's dive back in. So when we think about who those individuals were that were using this equipment, some kind of key ideas should come to mind. Having hands and shoulders that can support crutches or a walker, that's really, really important. Healthy bone density, safety is paramount to me. And if I suspected someone had compromised bone integrity, it wouldn't be right for me to think that it wouldn't be good for me to put them in this equipment. That we want to make sure that their bone density is healthy and determined to be healthy by their physician. No history of unhealed fractures. Able to stand using a device such as a standing frame. That's a great predictor, not only because it's obviously good for the bones to be standing upright, but it shows me that they've already have experience standing upright. So, you know, that the way the body reacts to sitting and standing, the body has to react to that change in position. So being in that standing frame is really telling for me if they can tolerate that switch easily. In general, good health. Height and weight between 5'3" and 6'2". You know, I have put people that are taller than 6'2" in it. It just comes down to the femur length relative to what the device can elongate to accommodate that. And then the weight not exceeding 220 pounds. You know, at the end of the day, this is a piece of mechanical, you know, medical equipment. We have to make sure that we're recognizing the limitations as such and staying within them. So the goals of using powered exoskeletons, you know, first and foremost, most people will say, yeah, to walk. So that first bullet point, restoring ambulatory function. But let's think about it a little bit. Why do we walk? What are the purposes of walking, and what are the benefits of walking? And I would argue that you know, for many, some of you who may have that experience in standing up, certainly you may be able to speak to the fact that maybe certain parts of your day are easier after doing that. So reducing secondary medical complications, such as bladder bowel issues, circulatory issues, skin issues, bone issues, things like that. Improve long-term outcomes. Study after study after study has shown that walking is very, very heavily correlated to positive health outcomes in able-bodied and alternatively able-bodied individuals. And then just improving the quality of life. I mean, how nice is it to be able to look someone in the eye at the plane in which you're either standing or sitting at? I mean, that's you know, just one example, but we want to empower people with this equipment while still conveying to them that they are, you know, the masters of their own body. So the American Congress of Rehabilitation Medicine back in 2013 recruited nearly 1,000 people with newly traumatic spinal cord injuries to participate in a one-year follow-up survey after being discharged from 6 rehab centers. And in that time, the researchers measured occurrence of post-rehabilitation within that 1 year of injury, length of rehospitalization stays, and the cause of rehospitalizations. So when you break down that 1,000, you know, more than a third were rehospitalized once within that 12-month period. And the most common reasons were UTIs, pneumonia, and pressure ulcers. And from a physical therapy standpoint, when it relates to being upright and walking, these are risk factors that to some extent, and to quite a bit of an extent, are modifiable and outright avoidable. And that's something that this technology is kind of positioned in a way to be helpful towards, is that by getting off of the wheelchair for a little bit, allowing for standing and walking, you're pushing the body to, you know, a level of function that it may have had prior to the injury. And I want to very quickly kind of just take a pause here and make mention from kind of a cultural standpoint. The ReWalk is not for the intent of replacing the wheelchair. You know, they are two totally different forms of mobility, and you know, it's totally meant that the wheelchair, if that's someone's primary mode of mobility, absolutely great, that's fantastic. So when I'm comparing this research and talking about the ReWalk relative to sitting, that's not saying this is better than a wheelchair. It's saying if you only have the option to sit versus if you have the option to sit and participate in standing upright and walk, that's where this technology can be very, very effective in maintaining health outcomes. So I just want to make that very, very clear. So this is just kind of another viewpoint of the evidence of why being upright and walking is important. So you'll see between the litany of studies here within the last 10 years, it goes without, you know, it's fairly intuitive that walking in a device is going to help improve physical activity because intrinsic of itself, it is walking. But thinking about going from that sitting position to a standing position and then walking it and experiencing that force of the foot hitting the ground and the body having to stabilize from that, Bladder bowel function has been shown to improve. Pain can potentially improve. Spasticity, given the level of rhythm in walking, which has been shown, you know, outside of this device, rhythmic movements tends to help with spasticity anyways, as well as load bearing. Sleep. You know, every patient I've worked with have told me that night after they were in the ReWalk for the first time, they slept better. And then quality of life. Again, it's just, it's another form of mobility for people who might not have it. And, you know, for them, it's nice that to be able to experience life from a different elevation, so to speak. So now that we've talked a little bit about the technology itself, I want to walk through the logistic of an individual here who may be interested in trying this technology and how that process works. So I make myself available on the phone for any, you know, either a clinician, because I do see that there are some clinicians here too, and I would love to kind of learn a little bit about their experience, talk through who may be appropriate on their end, you know, and that's certainly something we can do outside of this call. But in any case, we have an individual, let's just name him Mike. Mike is interested in the ReWalk. He lives in the Chicago area. I either get a hold of him, he either gets a hold of me. Either way, we're on the phone, we're talking. I'm asking him about his general health, what his level of injury was, you know, where his level of injury is, when he was injured, just trying to get a picture on paper. How does he present in my mind before we take the necessary steps? If I'm, you know, at that point, we're like, okay, you know, he's a lower level thoracic injury, great use of his arms, good core strength, still relatively active in his wheelchair, you know, injured 5 years ago, sure, no problems there. So then we send some paperwork over that basically allows for Mike, myself, and the clinic that we would have them evaluated at to communicate with one another. We want to make sure that we're respecting patient privacy. The individuals would need a script for trial, just like you'd get a script for a medication or just like you would get a script for physical therapy. So your referring doc, either, you know, your primary care, your neurologist, or your physical medicine and rehabilitation doc, any of those can write a script basically saying ReWalk exoskeleton trial. And these are things that I would help Mike go through, so at no point is he feeling alone in this process. So we have all the paperwork on hand. Boom. Now we can go to the clinic, and I'll just use, we'll use Next Steps of Chicago, for example, just because that was the last facility I was at. I was actually at Next Steps right before the outbreak hit. I was kind of racing the clock to get home after that, but it was, we had a good day there. We were able to work with some really cool patients. But the trial itself, basically the individual is at the facility, they're able to try the ReWalk, have it fitted to them. We do some final screens to make sure they're safe, and then we practice some of the basic skills. And by no means are we expecting people to be perfect the first time they're using it. But we're hoping that they get a sense of, okay, this is what it's like to be upright, this is what it's like to use the crutches, for me to find my balance, so on and so forth. And if they're really compelled to want to try it again, or if they know right then and there, like, hey, you know, let's go after this. That's when we then submit their case to the insurance companies. So with the support of their physical therapist, with their physician, with our team, we basically build medical packaging, send it to the insurance. So this sounds really complicated. It's not. It's a process. We want to make sure that we're checking all the boxes to ensure safe use of the device and compliance with the regulations that we're bound by for documentation purposes. And again, this is something I would be walking Mike through several times over just to make sure he doesn't feel he's alone. So for anyone looking for a visual, this is kind of what the ReWalk team would look like. You know, me being the business development manager right here. For those who maybe have workers' compensation claims or auto liability claims, or if they're working with a case manager, certainly they would be involved in the mix. Lumped in there would be like an insurance adjuster. We have our service and technical team that would be available. So once users have access to their own equipment, they have access to our tech team for any sort of questions they may have or service they may need. The PTs, but I do want to also point out that PTAs, ATs, aides, I even have a few OTs that are trained, which is awesome, because they're always helping me find cool ways to help the users, you know, get their shoes on and things like that if I can't necessarily think of one off the top of my head, as an example. And then their physicians. So it really, if nothing else, I really want to hammer home the point that this patient is surrounded by people who want them to succeed. And it's something that when we build these clinic partnerships, we really do try to vet these clinics and say, look, can we count on you to help be a part of this circle around this patient and guide them towards that success? And it's something I think we've done a really good job of. So presently, just a quick grab of some of the hot facilities I've worked with in Illinois itself. I know there are some people from out of state, so I am going to kind of mostly generalized to the Chicago area. If you are further south, or if you're in maybe out of state, don't worry. I can walk you through other sites that may be nearby and available. But these are just some of the first ones that jump out. And maybe they're familiar to a lot of you. So Next Step Chicago, Shirley Ryan, Marion Joy, Triability, and then Freighter. I know that's in Wisconsin, but it's basically kitty corner to northern Chicago. So I would throw that in there if people were so inclined. If you are a clinician, or if you know of a facility that has a wide range of people who are affected by spinal cord injury, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to learn more about your facilities, maybe some of the patients that you've seen or worked with. We are always trying to expand the accessibility efforts of our programming towards people. I've gone out into the middle of nowhere, South Dakota, to work with some patients before. So really, we really pride ourselves on making ourselves present and available for you guys. So we go through the trial process, we go through the submission process for personal coverage of this technology. They win their case. Now they're a ReWalker. They have their own device. It is theirs. First thing that has to happen is that device remains at the facility that they're going to train at until they are deemed independent and they've passed their basic and advanced skills. So it is completely time-based, and if you get approved for that piece of equipment, you're not pressured to do so in so many visits. It's all skills-based. So when we train the therapists to train the patients, the therapists are trained in recognizing what distinct skills classify this individual from basic to advanced to fully independent. Through that process of their training and beyond, the ReWalkers have access to technical and clinical support. They're obviously reaping the benefits that they so heavily leaned on and advocated for of that active and healthy lifestyle. I remember I worked with an individual who had a spinal cord injury for 11 years, and he was taking 2 different opiates every morning just so he could get out of bed. And he told me that once, that first day he used the ReWalk, he didn't have to take any of that medication that next day. Now that's just an N of 1. But where I've had several people tell me that their pain levels have improved, that their spasticity is improved. So it's that individual experience is so unique, but it's still fascinating to explore just because, it's walking, it's being upright, and it's something that I really enjoy helping people to do. And then community fostering communities. So there is a distinct Facebook page dedicated for people who have their own ReWalk, so that way they can kind of stay in touch with each other, maybe challenge each other to different races or different activities, and just kind of learn with each other how they're adopting this equipment in their life, problem solve certain things. So it's just, it's a really great community to be a part of. So again, if it isn't evident already, we really want to surround those that are in the ReWalk community with a level of support that's pretty difficult to match with anything else. So I want to just talk through a couple personal kind of individuals here that really speak to me. This is Jeff. He is a retired Air Force veteran of 17 years with a T12 injury, and he's out of Kansas City. You can see my colleague Christy in the Kansas City Chiefs shirt that she's wearing there, and he's got his KC hat on. He and I met at the St. Louis VA, and the VA is definitely, if there are any veterans here, if you know any veterans that are injured or spinal cord injured, the VA is a positive provider of this equipment. So if the veterans meet certain criteria, they are entitled to this device through coverage with the VA, which is really exciting stuff. But Jeff is still one of the early one of the earlier individuals to have come out of a study that the VA was doing. And by completing that study, he then gained approval for this equipment. So that medal he's holding was a 5K medal. He had the goal. He got, we fit him. Christy and I went over in January to fit him with his device. So from the time of January to now, he's built up such an aerobic tolerance that he did this 5K. That picture is from last Friday. So this was a really, really recent goal of his to accomplish. And I'm bummed I couldn't attend and then see him do it, but Jeff's quite a character. He's a good guy, and you can see that he's a pretty tall fella too. So just one of many individuals that we've been able to help out, and you know, really, really inspiring story. Just a really lovable guy. And then Todd, another gentleman that I'm really quite close with. So on the left, that's Todd and I with former Governor John Kasich in Ohio. We were invited to a tech conference in Columbus, Ohio, and Todd was able to wear his device. Todd has a T10 spinal cord injury, and he's out of kind of the central western side of Ohio, and was able to train on his device and took it home, and he's logged quite a lot of steps, that's for sure. So we took it to this conference. We were able to talk to Governor Kasich and kind of explain, you know, where the present coverage policies are at, and what sort of challenges we're still facing for the common user to be able to access this equipment. So it really was a really good exchange of dialogue. And then over on the right, goofball Todd with his Christmas gear on at one of the local nursing homes, just sharing some joy with the patients there. So again, just really goes to show that, you know, these are real people wearing this equipment and using it to achieve some really, really cool things. Speaking of Todd, this might be fairly moving to some of you. I won't play the full clip, but Todd was invited to his friend's wedding to stand as a groomsman. And Todd had just finished his training. And when he was invited to stand, Todd said, okay, I will stand. So that's what he did. And this is him walking down the aisle with his physical therapist behind him. And it's just, again, good powerful stuff. Let's play the first minute. So again, just, I mean, that kind of explains it all better than I ever could, right? So again, what the capabilities of and the context of this equipment really extends as far as our own imagination, to not be overly cliche here, but you know, I know people who want to dance with their daughters at their wedding using this equipment, or they want to, you know, walk down the aisle just like Todd did, or take it so far as and do a marathon with it. You know, it really, as we're getting to know our users, we really are trying to understand what is it that you want to accomplish with walking, and how can we help you guys do that. So I want to leave you with just a few thoughts here, and I'll open it up for some questions. But the ReWalk itself, it's well documented, and it is shown to be an effective therapy for individuals with SCI, depending how they want to use it. Training, the customer service, and support are an integral part of our mission, and we really make a point through the entirety of someone's experience with ReWalk to feel very one-on-one and engaged and part of that really tightly meshed ReWalk family. Many resources are available to assist financially, and I want to kind of tie these last 3 points together, that financial status is not an indicator. And really, for these people who have their equipment, it's because they were motivated. It's because they were so driven to succeed in this equipment that they were they were able to advocate for themselves with our assistance, of course. You know, we have material that we can provide to the right audiences on the insurance side to kind of help win that coverage. And I'll kind of speak really quick as far as some of the major groups that we've worked with. You know, a lot of commercial payer groups, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Anthem, United. You know, those are kind of the first that come to mind, but the workers' comp, the VA, victims of crime, TRICARE, you know, litigation. So, you know, we really are trying to pave that way for this technology to be recognized as a standard of care for people who qualify for it, just like a prosthetic limb would for someone who is an amputee. I will say, because I'm sure it'll come up in the question, for Medicare or Medicaid, we are in the process of submitting and just received pre-approval for the device to be recognized as a code. Doesn't mean it's immediately going to be recognized and provided coverage for, but at least we're getting it recognized as a codified item that could be billed eventually through Medicare, Medicaid. That'll be, you know, there's kind of still a timeline there for that. But what we're doing, if people are Medicare or Medicaid and they are great candidates for this equipment, we have a paced communication schedule with them and just making sure that we're checking in. Hey, is this still your address? Would you still be interested in trying this equipment out? So, you know, we want to make sure that, again, we're making this equipment accessible. And we're being as inclusive as we can while we chase other opportunities that might be a little bit more quickly forgiving on the front end. So I do see a question really quick. Let me take a look at that. IFC, has Aetna Insurance ever covered someone? I do want to say yes to that. I haven't seen it personally, but I know that we have it on we have kind of a compiled list of all the cases that we've won from. So yes, I will say that Aetna has covered someone. So provided they fit those qualifications, it is worth trying to submit and seeing if we can win a case for them. So thank you for asking that. Cool. Change the slide here. So I'm going to pause really quick. This is my contact information. Please take a picture of this with your phone, write it down, type it out, whatever you need to do, but I'll sit here for a good, you know, 30, 40 seconds, just so that way you guys have it. Because I do want to follow up with those that registered, and just again to get a feel for what stood out to you in this discussion, what further questions you had. But I am definitely your point person moving forward. And likely, if you're a potential candidate, I will be the one putting you in the unit. You know, and that's you can text me too. I'm hip to all the technologies. I say that ironically, given how late the Zoom call started off. If you missed this, let me know. Or, you know, if you may have my email as well from just doing the registration, but yeah, I'll go ahead and kind of keep clicking ahead here. So I wanted to point out really quick other resources that people have been able to use, whether it's to find more information or potentially even find funding or funding options for the ReWalk if that insurance isn't the easiest route to go. So the Illinois Physical Therapy Association, I know that there's an equivalent occupational therapy association as well, but this is dedicated for physical therapists and you know, even the patients that want to look up various information, resources, things like that. Great place to start. Over on the bottom, you'll see the Craig H. Nielsen Foundation, the Travis Roy Foundation, Dreams of Recovery. These are all very specific spinal cord injury focused foundations that do take, you know, applications and have granted approval for, you know, complex medical equipment. So again, part of when we're talking with individuals is we're really trying to brainstorm, you know, what are the primary ways that this equipment would get financed if this wasn't something you were going to pay for out of pocket, which we don't expect. And then certainly the Paralyzed Veterans of America. The Vaughan chapter is the chapter out of Chicago. there's one in Milwaukee as well. And, you know, pretty much every state has their own chapter here. But because the VA, like I said, has such a positive approval rate for this equipment, it's not a bad idea to go through the PVA and then try to get a hold of me, because navigating the VA is a little bit of a separate process, just in how to coordinate the trial and things like that. So if there are specific questions on that, I'd be happy to kind of tailor to that at a separate time. And I really want to just highlight again, I can't thank enough how well this came together, at least philosophically, despite my technical difficulties, between the Spinal Cord Injury Association of Illinois and the Backbone. So for those who may not know one or the other, you know, I spoke with Mercedes Round, who's the executive director of the SCIA of Illinois. And really, this is just a mass resource group for people who are looking, you know, people affected by spinal cord injury, family members, clinicians. It's just a basic central hub for people looking for further information on this, on anything they may need. And so I do appreciate the efforts that Mercedes went through to disseminate information on this this webinar. And then similarly with Backbones, I had a great conversation with Rebecca Torres. If you haven't met her, if you haven't heard her story, I really encourage you to do so. She's really quite inspiring, to say the least. So she was willing to kind of jointly partner in on this webinar and spread the word as well. And Backbones, as I understand it, is a real good, I kind of call it like a watering hole. I may be simplifying it, but really it's a great collection point for people looking to network and connect with each other. You know, whether they are, you know, someone with spinal cord injury to another person with spinal cord injury, or a clinician who's just trying to learn more information or build a sense of community. So it's really a great kind of networking, socialized kind of group for people who are looking to take this, you know, seriously and who are looking to kind of professionally engage with one another. So I think these were great landing points for this information to be spread out. And I hope that if you took anything from this, you know, you certainly reroute people back to these websites, back to these Facebook pages. Both of them can be found really, really easily. And it's something that, you know, in the future, you know, maybe, 6 months, a year from now, we can have them host this again to, you know, anyone who may be newly injured, who may have missed this. But just, again, I think it goes without saying, like, you know, this, especially in the para population in quad, having that sense of community is so, so important. And it's just, again, a privilege on my end to have a very small part of that. So I'll leave the floor open if anyone has any questions. I do appreciate, like I said, your attention at this time, and yeah, feel free to fire away. So it sounds like I'm reading a question here about visual impairments, and certainly it would require some further conversation, because I mean, certainly being able to see, being able to activate, you may have to operate the ReWalk, it does require use of a watch. So it would take some level of muscle memory to utilize that watch, and to do so in a way that would safely help you out in the community. But I do know of facilities that have exoskeleton equipment. So at the very least, we can try to, if someone did have visual impairments, we could at least say, all right, is there a way to use this in a facility first with a bunch of hands around, just to make sure and kind of gauge what that effect is like. But definitely I would classify that as a bit of a more unique case, but certainly one I'd like to explore. Any other questions? Let's see, I'll open this one up. Someone's asking what the ballpark figure is if you went out of pocket. You know, the device, we price pointed out at just over $100,000 for someone paying it for it out of pocket, which does include a 5-year warranty as well. And I am getting a question about how this is different from the Indigo. You know, I really want to make a point in saying that again, PT hat first here. I think it's great. Whether you're using a ReWalk or using an Indigo, I think it's really great because it means you're being upright and you're walking, and that's fantastic. And I would prefer it being one of those two things rather than nothing. But from kind of a side-by-side basis, I'd say the two biggest differences between the ReWalk and the Indigo is that we have a kind of templated process for people to get this equipment through their insurance, whereas the Indigo, to my understanding, for those who want it, typically are only paying for it out of pocket, unless you are a veteran. And then the second comparison is that to this date, there's no documentation of anyone completing, a long race in the Indigo like there is with the ReWalk. We really pride ourselves on making a durable piece of equipment that can withstand someone being in it and using it. So I'll say, accessibility and durability are probably the two biggest difference points. So to the individual that asked it, we can talk a little bit later too, because I would like to learn a little bit about what your experience has been, because it sounds like you've been able to at least see the Indigo, which I think is fantastic. That's awesome. Another question on shelf life, average replacement frequency. We do have it warranted for 5 years. That doesn't mean if you hit 5 years in one day, the device is just going to crumble in front of your feet. But rather, then it's starting to be, all right, do we talk about resubmitting for a new piece of equipment at that point, or pursuing, kind of on a yearly professional, preventative maintenance schedule. So I would say if you want something hard and fast, 5 years is kind of your good estimate there. But I've seen people with their device for longer than 5 years. I mean, Terry's been using her device since 2014. So, it's just that covered within that initial cost of the unit is that first 5 years of warranty. Let's see. I thought I saw another question. I might have pulled it up. All I'm seeing right now. Hopefully I've answered everyone's questions here. I'll just kind of give you another 20 seconds or so and let you go about your evening otherwise. But, I really do appreciate, again, the chance in doing this. I will be reaching out to you guys because I do have either your emails or your phone. So do please try to respond, just because any feedback helps me. Even if it's hey, this is cool, I might not be a good candidate. Great, that helps me to know. It would be great if there were, if there was someone you knew that might be great to talk to about this. Would love to get in touch with them. Or if you're a clinician, like I said, I'd like to learn more about your facility. I'd like to learn more about the patients you're treating. So I'm seeing a few more chats. Let's see what we got. Excellent. Oh, thank you. To the person that said great presentation, I do appreciate that. So we will have recordings of this, and I do have the slides. I can break those down pretty easily. And if you're a particular clinician or an academician, I can present this to your own team if you want, and I can dive deeper into the science. I can dive deeper into the logistics on things. Whatever you guys need, I'm here. I'm available. Let's see. Awesome. Hey, I'll let you guys get to your evening. Doesn't seem like there's any further questions at this point. So again, thank you all for your time. Really do try to get back to me once I reach out to y'all. And yeah, have a great rest of your days, and just keep staying safe, stay well out there, enjoy the good weather. All right, you all take care. And yes, this was recorded, I promise you.